All right, Big Man. Today is Tuesday. It's June 28th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. It's Eddie. It's Chief. Chief, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Are you adjusted to the new studio setup now?
I'm getting there. I really like it, though.
I think I like it too.
I don't know. Did I talk about the frustration of the blackjack table on Thursday? All right.
We talked about it in the rundown or somewhere.
Yeah,
but
it's just too high. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to figure it out. I asked I asked one of the guys to look for seat risers, and they looked at me like I had 10 heads. Like,
Well,
that's a thing.
right?
Right?
It's a thing. But look, we got Harry's 24, 25. We got
25, come on.
Yeah, 25. We got nincompoops around.
Yeah, but
so.
it's seat riser, like a bed riser, like you
Yeah,
raise your
just a
bed,
little- just a little platform.
Yeah, exactly. Little platform. You put under all four legs, and that's all you have, and that we'd be fine.
I do like the idea of having it set up so it's like a doctor's office. When White Sox Dave's in here, his feet are just like dangling in the air.
Yeah, he just can't.
Can't reach
touch
the floor.
bottom. Just to jump off.
His little legs just swinging there.
Oh, he'd be so mad if he heard.
He'd
you
be
say this
furious.
right now.
Yeah,
He'd be very upset. But that's very funny. Regardless, though, welcome. Hope you're doing great. Before we really kick things off, though, Chief, I want to talk about our friends at Innovative Care.
Ooh.
Innovative ADHD, actually, they're there for you when you need some ADHD medication. Is that right?
That's right. They take insurance. It's not one of those online-only refill clinics. It's a real medical clinic. Have to be a resident of Illinois. But, managing, everything is so difficult to manage. I feel like there's 100 different things going on. This is a solution to manage your ADHD medication. So just go to innovativeadhd.com, correct?
InnovativeADD.com.
Innovative ADD.
Yeah, it's for ADHD medication, but you could find your medication refills at innovativeadd.com. So it's a common mistake probably. So
Big time.
That's actually good. We did that too. So people
I did
hopefully
that on
don't forget it
purpose.
then. Yeah,
Did
so
that on
people don't
purpose.
forget it. Innovative is a real medical clinic. It's not one of those online only refill services. And it's really kind and compassionate care. I went there for a few COVID tests, and they were always nice and abrupt and super compassionate, like they say. They take insurance, like you said. You must be a resident of Illinois. One more time, that is innovativeadd.com, and they'll get you taken care of. Make sure you're checking them out.
Yeah, you're a big fan, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Chief. What are we getting into today?
Well, this to me is in the Eddie suggestion pile. Okay, so anything that has to do with creepy fucking mass murderer, serial killer stuff, that's always comes from Eddie's brain. And this guy, I mean, it's too, like, I didn't know about this story, but it's like one of the most iconic bands in American history, the Beach Boys, linked to the most infamous, or one of the most infamous killers, Charles Manson. That they're just boys. One member of the band in particular, and Charles Manson, boys.
Yep.
Crazy. Did you know it?
So I knew it, but that's
Okay.
why I'm like, hey, we should dig deeper into this because a lot of people definitely don't know about it at all, like you.
Yep.
And then a lot of people like me, just know it at a surface level.
Yeah. And I guess there's some misinformation or misnomers about which member of the Beach Boys and all that. So we're going to get to the bottom of it and kind of clarify as best we can.
Shit. Okay,
Yeah.
good, cool. So we'll do that. But yeah, it's fucking summer. 4th of July is around the corner. The Beach Boys are great. Barbara Ann, I fucking love that song.
They're the type of music that when it pops on, you know it within one note and it puts a smile on your face. You're just kind of bopping around. Like I listened to a Beach because I was doing the research for it. And even though it was all about murders, I flipped on the Beach Boys on my walk to work because it's a beautiful Chicago day and nothing says summer like the Beach Boys.
Dude, I'm sure they have a ton of accolades, but I still feel like in our present time, and they've got a lot of sing-alongs, but in some form, they're still a little underrated to me. But
I feel like they probably just got overshadowed by some of there's so many monster iconic bands from that same time period.
Yeah.
That they're like second tier, kind of. Like they're behind the Beatles and the Stones and all those types of people. So I think that's a big part of it, but they're just like, everyone knows their music.
Yeah, they do. And yeah, man, I've just been fascinated how a member of their band was just like boys with Charles Manson. Charles Manson is, in and of itself, and the inspiration for this, why we're doing it now, I listened to the Protect Your Parks episode they do on Rogan with Shane Gillis and Mark Norman and Ari Shaffir. And they talked a little bit about what's the shit that they were doing with him and
with Manson.
Yeah, the
MK Ultra.
Yes, the MK Ultra. They talk about
the CIA program. We can touch on that a little bit at the end.
Yes, we talk about Hinckley, which we're going to do an episode on at some point.
Yep.
And they talk about Manson. Manson, just like, I don't know, it's just a fascinating guy where it's.
I think it's one of those things, and there's this guy named Tom O'Neill, and he's done Rogan before too. He wrote a whole book about Manson and the CIA connection and how deep it went, where it's like, you know, they were basically feeding him psychedelics and LSD and testing things out on him, and it went terribly wrong. Or, you know, there's a quote I read somewhere along the way that former CIA goes, no, it went terribly right. Like they were trying to, you know, poison people's brains and fuck with people's brains to the point it's almost like the beginning of what's the Matt Damon where he's like an action hero, government
Bourne Identity,
like the Bournes, where they just break you down completely, and then you come back and you speak 10 languages and you're an assassin. You know,
someone needs to do a really good. I'm sure there's books, but I don't know of a very good documentary about Manson. But I'm very interested in that because there's a lot of moving parts.
I wonder if some stuff like it still just hasn't been declassified, but maybe, you know, what's his face? Oliver Stone did very, very good documentary on the Kennedy assassination within the last year that was out on Showtime. And he was able to parse through all the stuff that's like been classified, declassified. And I feel like we probably need a little bit of stuff like somebody like that to really do a full, like it might take 10 years to go through all the information, do it the right way, but I think it would be worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
Not
especially
for me
because there's so many videos of him. Like if you watch type Charles Manson on YouTube and you see some of those creepy courtroom videos or whatever.
Well, he's done a ton of interviews.
Yeah. It's crazy, dude.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But all right, we can get into it.
Yeah. So it was, you know, the common misnomer is that Charles Manson had this, or maybe it's a mistake or what, but had a big time feud with Brian Wilson, who was like the leader of the Beach Boys, the pride of St. Charles, Illinois. I don't know if you knew that.
Story for another day, but St. Charles wild like that, like Jenny McCarthy and Wahlberg. Like I don't get it.
That was random too. Yeah, they're on the east side of town, and I'm almost positive Brian Wilson was in Crane Row Estates, and that's where like they just had like these unbelievable mansions, like McGrath auto dealers, like their family lived in that neighborhood, and so whatever. But it was that, you know, the pride of St. Charles. So it was not really Brian Wilson. Everybody tries to link him to this story, but he really, the more you dig in, he almost had no involvement with Charles Manson at all. The story really starts with his brother Dennis, who was the drummer in the Beach Boys and had his own kind of very, very tragic end to his life. But the story goes is one time in like 1967 or 68, where Dennis Wilson is driving down the highway and he sees these two young female hitchhikers, picks them up, brings them somewhere, drops them off. And then it was either later that day or the next day, he sees the same two girls hitchhiking again. So he stops and picks them up again, and they start talking. And, you know, this is like, you know, the hippie era, and it's California. It's just fucking hippies everywhere. So they get to talking, and Dennis Wilson has this, you know, guru that he's, you know, telling these girls about, who's looks like the traditional Indian robes, white hair. I can't remember the guru's name, but he's talking about it. And these two girls were like, oh, like we actually have a guru as well. Our guru's name is Charlie, and he just got out of prison. And he's like, okay. So he brings those two girls back to his house, and he's like, he drops them off at his house. And then he's like, I got to go record. So he goes to the recording studio, does whatever he does there, comes back, and Charles Manson's waiting for him in the driveway. Okay. And then in his house, guess who's in his house?
Those two girls.
And everybody else in the Manson family.
Oh.
They're saying it was like 10, 12 people. It was like eight or nine girls, a couple of guys, and Charles Manson. So what would you do in that situation? You come home, you had picked up these two girls, and now you got 12 people in your house within a few hours.
Dude, at that time, I don't think it's that weird. I really don't.
I'm calling the police.
But I don't know, though, dude. Like you said, it's that hippy-dippy era, and he's already given them 2 rides, so he's clearly has some level of interest. That guru shit is a little weird, so, like, I'm not...
Dude,
of course, now it's like, especially seeing, knowing who Manson is now.
Well, I think if it's anyone, if you come home to your home and you have a strange guy in your driveway, and then, oh, by the way, we got
12 people.
We got 10, 12 people just in your house.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I'm being like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't invite. Yeah. And that wasn't it at all. Okay. What Dennis Wilson ended up doing was letting them stay there, all of them, Charles Manson, the whole crew, for like 2 to 3 months. People are a little wishy-washy on the exact timeline, but it was a long time, and he just funded their entire existence there. So they were, you need a car, I'll get you a car. You need food, we'll get clothes. The other big thing that he had to fund, okay, was trips to the doctor to get penicillin, because they were all having so much group sex, which was part of like the Charles Manson like cult shit. They were all having so much sex with each other that they were constantly giving each other gonorrhea and other things. So Brian Wilson, hey, let's load up. We'll all go down to the clinic, get some shots of penicillin so we get rid of this gonorrhea. So it was like a fucking wild scene at his house. And, there's supposedly, like, it's hard to imagine when you've seen these videos of Charles Manson, and he's got like the swastika tattoo in the middle of his eyebrows and these creepy videos, and his eyes bugging out. But like, everybody who says they knew him at that time said that he was this like very kind of charming, mysterious, but also like maybe a little bit gregarious guy, where he could just almost like manipulate you, and people just become enamored with him. And Dennis Wilson was certainly a victim of that. Like, let's do the same drugs. And then Charles Manson really, really wanted to be a rock star and a musician as well, which I didn't know until researching this story, but he was like obsessed with that. So Dennis Wilson introduces Charles Manson to this guy named Terry Melcher, who was a producer. He co-wrote the song Kokomo for the Beach Boys. He later on would produce some of their albums for them. Like into the 90s, they released it was like the first digital, like purely digital album recording was done by this guy Terry Melcher and the Beach Boys. But he had the Byrds, he had Paul Revere and the Raiders. Like, he was a player in Southern California in the entertainment industry at that time. And so, he had met, so Dennis Wilson introduces Charles Manson to Terry Melcher. Melcher expresses interest in Manson as a musician, and also to produce a documentary about the ranch, where
Span Ranch.
Exactly. So where, they're like where the Manson family was living. And
that's, if you've ever seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they cover that.
I still haven't.
Oh, you haven't?
Still haven't, yeah.
It was good. It wasn't, I was...
People were all over the board on that movie.
Yeah, I was expecting more.
Yeah.
But like,
wasn't it like 4 hours long or something too?
It was like 3.
Okay.
But I was really interested in the Manson aspect, and like, that was just a part of it.
Okay.
And like, that's my fault, but whatever. And then I don't know, it was very Tarantino'd.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, people like that, people don't, but it was fine. It was good.
Yeah.
The way it was shot was like awesome.
Yeah. I like Tarantino. I've been meaning to get to it, but it's one of those things where it's like, am I going to commit the next 4 hours or 3 hours or whatever he said it was? So,
and for people that don't know what Span Ranch is, didn't see that movie, it's basically where they shot a lot of old school Hollywood Westerns at. It's another, it was a ranch in California.
Yep.
And the guy who owned it, I forget was it Span? George Span? No.
Something like that.
Whatever.
Yeah.
He, maybe his name wasn't Span at all, but it was called Span Ranch. And he let the Manson family stay there as well.
Yeah. So then Melcher, there's 2 incidents that happened. So he had expressed this interest, like, we're going to produce a documentary about you and like your family, the Manson family. And Melcher was under the impression that it was just some like counterculture kind of hippie sex cult, which might make for an interesting documentary. he didn't know it was like, oh, there are murders.
Yeah,
So he nixed the idea. So then long story short, Manson went in and auditioned for Terry Melcher. And Melcher was like, like, I don't think this is it. So I'm going to pass on producing your album. And then, but they're still supposedly going to be on for the documentary. And then Manson got into a fight at that ranch. And Melcher was just like, all right, like, I just don't think this is a fit. I don't, it's just, I'm not interested anymore. So that pissed off Manson, a crazy person, like you wouldn't believe. Okay. So now he's like enraged about this situation. And at the similar time frame, Charles Manson and Dennis Wilson had been working on music together. And they recorded, there was a song I want to say that Manson wrote called, I think it's like Cease to Live or something like that. And it ended up on the B-side of an album recorded by the Beach Boys called Bluebirds Over the Mountain. But they changed the name to Never Learn Not to Love. And then they changed some of the lyrics. They changed some of the arrangement, the composition. So, and then Manson wasn't credited because he's like, hey, like I largely wrote this song. You tweaked a few things and, I'm left off. So Dennis Wilson had like given him some money to get him to like go away, but just never went away. So now he has the documentary yanked. He fails the audition for Melcher, and the song that he, at least in his head, really wrote and contributed to, he doesn't get any credit for. And they didn't tell him that they had changed everything until the album was already released. So now he's like, Manson is fucking pissed, and Melcher is at the top of his list. So Melcher had this house in Southern California, and then he didn't sell it, but he had moved to a different place in Malibu. So he moved north to Malibu, and then he rented that house to Roman Polanski, who, famous director, and I think he's got some big time skeletons in his. Yeah. And Sharon Tate, who was his girlfriend, wife, whatever at the time. And she was very pregnant. She was like 8.5 months pregnant. So Manson starts showing up to that house all the time looking for Terry Melcher, and like had left a bullet with like a note with his housekeeper. And he kept coming back, and they would, whoever was there would be like, hey man, like he doesn't fucking live here anymore. Like you got to get out of here. We don't know who the fuck you are. And he would be like increasingly threatening. And then Roman Polanski was over in London filming a movie. And this is fast forward. It's August 9th, 1969. That's when they murdered everybody in that house. Mm-hmm. So it was like they had a kind of like an after dinner party. It was Sharon Tate. I think it was like 6 or 8 people. One of them was Abigail Folger, who was the heir to the Folgers Coffee. She was there. And so his people showed up and just murdered everybody in that house. And that was then like the next day they did like a very similar style murder, just because Manson didn't like the way that that murder at the Tate house was executed. Like, hey, like you guys were too nervous. We got to do another murder now to get you guys ready. But that was that, and that's the story, is that it was all Dennis Wilson, and then there's like another like. People dispute whether or not this is true. So this is from an article in the LA Times I think it was like year 2000, because there was a Beach Boys like made for TV movie, and they showed Dennis Wilson kind of like, being very afraid and cowering to Charles Manson, and Charles Manson had threatened Dennis Wilson's family, his children. And Dennis Wilson like freaked out on him and like beat the shit out of Charles Manson, but then like left his own house because he was still actually like very afraid of Charles Manson, and like never returned. And he tried to like pay off. Manson called him after the murders for the Tate family were committed, and he was like, Manson said, I've just been to the moon, and like kind of extorted him, supposedly threatened him, got like more money out of Dennis Wilson. And then, when Manson was finally caught, they wanted Dennis Wilson to testify, and he was saying, I am not doing that. Too scared. So he like supposedly did a
He probably thought he had people all over the place.
yeah, which he kind of did.
Yeah.
And that's what we're finding out. You know, this guy, Tom O'Neill, that author, and I think he was on Rogan maybe 2 or 3 years ago. He wrote this book about all the connections between Charles Manson and the CIA. And it was like, well, his parole officer was in this, you know, an asset for this. Because Charles Manson as a kid was, you know, and a young adult was always in and out of jail, always. So he had a parole officer, but the parole officer was a CIA asset. So he was feeding the CIA candidates for this MK Ultra program. And then you find out, you know, on some other charge he was brought up on, the prosecutor was also a CIA asset. So he got off, and he basically had like this get out of jail free card where he didn't matter what he got in trouble for until it was Sharon Tate. He was he was dodging real convictions and real jail time supposedly because the CIA was doing all these experiments on him. So they would always be like, like he's with us. Well, don't you worry about it. We'll take care of it. And then Dennis Wilson, you know, he, from this whole ordeal and probably other complications too, never really mentally recovered. So he went through all sorts of battles with drugs, alcohol, depression, went through a very messy divorce. And one of the things that happened in the divorce is that the wife, somewhere, I think it was Northern California, was running around this bay and just dumping all of his shit and her shit to the bottom of the ocean. So in 1983, Dennis Wilson decides like he's going to go and try to recover some of that stuff. And who knows what was, if there were other factors at play, but he drowned looking for some of the items that his ex-wife had dumped into the ocean. So he died in 1983. But he had said in an interview in 1970 something that, you know, he'll never speak of what happened with that song with Charles Manson. He never really spoke publicly about his relationship with Charles Manson. And it's still, you know, you have like some witness testimony, some hearsay stories, but still people don't know exactly what went down and between them, and if it was more or greater, how much participation Dennis Wilson had. But it does seem like he mentally never really recovered from those years where he knew Charles Manson.
And I'm reading here now that I looked up Melcher, and he went into seclusion too. Yeah. Like he was pretty fucked up by it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think he died much later. I think he died in the 90s from complications from skin cancer.
Yeah, he died in 2004.
2004, okay. Yeah. And then Manson died in prison or a hospital prison in 2017.
Dude, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know. So obviously, like you're saying, I knew the Folgers, I knew Sharon Tate, I knew Polanski.
Yep.
I had not realized that they were only going to that house because that's where he was renting that to them.
Yes.
So this Beach Boy is like super connected.
Yeah. Right.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, it's super fucked up.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. And there's so many like that story about where, you know, Dennis Wilson like beat him up for threatening the children because he said something like, supposedly, something like, just every time you look at this bullet, I want you to be thankful that your kids are still safe. And he like snapped. But again, like that's very much like, you know, like a rumor, and like no one's ever been able to prove it. And then it's just like, oh, I wasn't there, but I heard it from a third party. So, you know, it's like a game of telephone. No one really, everybody who now like really truly knows what happened is dead, you know? So
yeah,
it's hard to know exactly what happened, but yeah, like the Beach Boys, the happy-go-lucky California, you know, suntan, all that kind of stuff, playing in the ocean, deeply connected to one of the worst murderer cults ever. So,
jeez,
fucked up.
I like a lot of people don't know that aspect.
I didn't.
Yeah. I feel like that's pretty unknown if you're outside.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew a lot about Manson, but I knew there was a Beach Boy connection, but I didn't know that was it.
Yeah.
It looks like the tracks were recorded, and then they never completed the session though.
Okay.
For that song.
With that
Yeah.
Never Learn Not to Love, or
Yeah.
for the Cease to Live or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
But could you imagine if that someone got that track? I don't know if that track was ever out there or not.
So it's never been released to the public.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So the refigured version that ended up on the B-side, that Manson was like, that's mine. That's the Never Learn Not to Love, where it's like based on that song that he wrote, but it was never maybe different enough.
Yeah.
But the stuff that Manson wrote was never released to the public.
Damn.
Yeah. I wonder. Imagine if it was like essentially like another Kokomo, like one of those Beach Boy tunes.
Yeah,
And it's
right.
like, this is the happiest song ever by a guy who murders everybody.
Yeah, that is a little different connotation. There,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Jesus. All right then, Chief. There it is.
There it is.
That's the Beach Boys
Yep.
connection to
Yep.
Charles Manson and one of the most infamous murders
Yeah.
of all time.
Yeah. And we could probably do another episode on Manson someday about that MK Ultra stuff that we just kind of touched on a little bit.
That would be interesting. We should do that. Mm-hmm. All right then, Chief. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. That's it for today. We will see you all tomorrow.